Welcome to Bio 5 at Cabrillo College, where we're going to start off by talking about the chemical environment of the human body that is composed of atoms, molecules, ions, cells. So, human physiology is the function of the human body. If you've taken anatomy, anatomy is the function of the human body as well. It's the structure and function of the human body more at a macroscopic level. Whereas human physiology is the functioning of the human body at the biochemical, molecular, and cellular level. As a result, we need to really get a firm grasp on all of these components that make up the body. Atoms are the basic building block of everything in our body. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen are the main atoms we're going to be talking about or seeing. There's certainly a number of others, but those are the great majority of atoms that make up our bodies. Charged atoms are what we refer to as ions. And I'm going through this pretty quickly because chemistry is a prerequisite for this course. So I'm assuming you've learned all of this, but I'm just going to do a quick review. Ions are charged atoms that have either gained or lost electrons. Positively charged ions are known as cations, and negatively charged ions are known as anions. So positively charged ions that we'll talk about at great length throughout this term are sodium, potassium, calcium, and chloride on the anionic end of that spectrum. And there's molecular anions as well, such as bicarbonate, and we'll talk about those in detail as well. While we're talking about molecules are atoms bound to each other via covalent bonds, the sharing of electrons. So glucose, which is a significantly important molecule to us this semester and for our bodies, is a type of molecule. Hemoglobin, the transport protein in our body, transport of oxygen, I should say, is a molecule. It's a protein molecule. Insulin is a protein. And then we have lipid molecules. So a number of different types of molecules in our body that we'll talk about. And then we have cells, which are composed of a litany of molecules. Our body is composed of trillions of cells. I don't know that anyone knows the exact number of cells in our body, but it's in the order of trillions. And what we see, this big circle is representing a cell. Generally, I'm going to draw cells as a circle like this. Certainly not all cells are as symmetric as this cell I've drawn here. I'm not sure any of them really are. And there's great variety in shapes and types of cells in our body. But we're just going to use this as our template. Around the perimeter of this cell in the dark white line is the plasma membrane, also known as the cell membrane. It's composed of a phospholipid bilayer, and we'll talk about that in detail in subsequent videos. Inside of the cell is occupied by the intracellular fluid, otherwise known as the cytosol. Cytosol and intracellular fluid are synonymous with each other. And then distributed throughout the cytosol are a number of organelles, which are structures within the cells that have specific functions. Over here, we see the nucleus, which houses our genetic material, otherwise known as our DNA. Another really important organelle is this right here, which is the mitochondria. The mitochondria is responsible for making the great majority of ATP in our body. Certainly, there's some ATP that is produced in the cytosol, but if we want to produce a lot of ATP and if we have oxygen, it's going to be achieved within the mitochondria. There's a couple organelles here that I haven't talked about. The rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum. The rough endoplasmic reticulum produces proteins, whereas the smooth endoplasmic reticulum has a couple of different functions depending on what cells of the body we find it in. But the smooth endoplasmic reticulum synthesizes lipids, but probably most important for our discussion in subsequent videos is the storage of calcium in the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So we will detail all of those as we move forward. There's certainly other structures within the cell that are important, and we will talk about arguably the single most important molecule in the body is water, otherwise known as H2O. It's composed of two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. And our body is composed of upwards of 60% of water. So it is significantly important. It dictates how cells and molecules interact with each other throughout the body. So we can split up the water into two basic regions: the water that's within our body cells and the water that's outside of our body cells. 2/3 of the water in our bodies is found within cells, and we refer to that as intracellular fluid. And that is also synonymous with cytosol, which we talked about earlier. So 2/3 of our body water is found within all the trillions of cells throughout our body. The rest of the fluid, the 1/3 remaining, occupies our extracellular fluid. If I'm talking about fluid and you're trying to figure out if it's extracellular fluid or intracellular fluid, and you have no idea, but you're certain it's not within cells, then you can be certain it's the extracellular fluid, otherwise known as the ECF. I will refer to generally extracellular fluid as ECF and intracellular fluid as ICF. But back to the ECF, it's composed of blood plasma, which is the fluid component in our blood, and interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid is the fluid between our blood vessels and our cells. So blood plasma and interstitial fluid make up the bulk of our extracellular fluid, but any other fluid in the body that is not part of cells is going to be part of our extracellular fluid. For example, pleural fluid around the lungs is part of the extracellular fluid. Pericardial fluid around the heart is extracellular fluid. The fluid in our eye, the aqueous humor, is part of the extracellular fluid. And this fluid in this water plays a significant role in the functioning of the human body and a lot of things we're going to look at within human physiology. Okay, lastly, let's look at the biomolecules that make up our body. They are carbohydrates, lipids, nucleotides, and proteins. Carbohydrates, there's complex carbohydrates like starch and glycogen, and there's simple carbohydrates like glucose. And there's a number of others, and we will detail those. Glucose is something we're going to talk about almost every day. Lipids are things like fats, steroids, phospholipids. Nucleotides we'll talk about are DNA, RNA, ATP. ATP is that energy storage molecule that is made in the mitochondria that we talked about previously. Proteins are the most common biomolecules in our body. Hormones are made out of proteins, channels are made out of proteins, muscles are made out of proteins, enzymes are made out of proteins, and that's just the beginning of the list. So proteins produce a lot of structures within the bodies. These are the biomolecules.